Hello everybody, it's Novi and welcome back to the channel. When it comes to young wrestlers nowadays, development is hard. A lot of them get swept up from the big two companies even when they're not ready to move on from the indies. And even if they don't, what good is working in the modern North American indie scene anyways? I feel like this is why we hear the go to Japan, go to Stardom suggestions all the time for these talents, and I find myself saying the exact same thing. However, when it comes to that thing, it's not as easy as it's made out to be. We're going to get into this and so much more when I talk about today's video, why AEW wrestlers should go on excursions more. Before we do jump into it, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I upload videos every single Saturday just talking graps. I think it's best we start with the whole send them to Japan thing and how that's not so simple. Just for starters, imagine being asked to uproot your entire life, move away from friends, family, your partner, just to live life in a foreign country for 6 months or so. I think when I put it like that, it's much easier to digest why that's so challenging. Not everyone can be a Zack Sabre Jr. and make Japan their home long term. I would also say that the perception of doing a Japan excursion has changed a lot over the years. Back in the day, it was pretty much considered a must to go to Japan at least one time just because of how good that could be for your career overall. Now, from my general assessment, it feels like a lot of talent don't think that Japan is a requirement for their careers like they used to. All these reasons and all these shifts in mentality aren't necessarily wrong and are valid lines of thinking, but they're not ones that I necessarily agree with. I feel like there's countless examples of excursions to Japan making wrestlers immensely better, and that's what I want to get into right now. One of the best examples in the entire world of wrestling of just that thing is Mariah May. Just judging off of public perception and how people used to talk about her, before she left for Stardom, she was considered a promising young talent, but nothing that anybody was losing their mind over. Then, she moved away from the British indie scene, went to Japan, worked her ass off, she wrestled 99 matches in 1 year, and improved at an insane rate. Keep in mind that before that year, which was just last year, 2023, she had only worked 52 matches combined since she had started her career in 2019. She nearly doubled her total career matches in 1 year after going to Stardom. Obviously, working that many matches and getting that many reps is going to help anyone improve, but that's clearly not something that she would have been able to do had she not gone to Japan. Joshi wrestling is just an entirely different world to American women's wrestling nowadays. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is because promotions in Japan are entirely built around women's wrestlers. Over here in America, we only have really two notable promotions that do that, in Women of Wrestling, which is pretty much unspoken about at this point, and Mission Pro Wrestling, which is in its early stages at the moment, but is quite promising in my opinion. However, in Japan, they have Ice Ribbon, OZ Academy, Pro Wrestling Wave, Sea Lining, Sendai Girls, Tokyo Joshi Pro, and Stardom, just to name a good handful of them. These are all notable promotions that have been around for at least a decade, with rosters full of some of the best women's wrestlers in the entire world. A lot of these promotions also draw really well, or in Stardom's case in particular, better than a lot of top Japanese promotions like Noah. I don't think that's a thing you'll ever see from either of those two companies that I mentioned in America. It's just not feasible over here. It could be, but it's not presented that way, because over here, women's wrestling is presented as just another sideshow for men's wrestling. But back and forth we go. In Japan, they're presented as their own thing. They're presented on the level or even better than that. And there's so many promotions to pick from. Talent have so much more opportunity when it comes to picking which company would suit them best, allowing for much smoother growth long term. It also helps, just like I mentioned before, these promotions run a ton of shows where young wrestlers get chances to get the reps in, which is so crucial in their development. The reps alone can make a talent better. The problem is, people think that an excursion to Japan can solve all of a young talent's issues, which just isn't the case. I feel like this pops over more when talking about sending women over to Stardom, just because of their track record in the past, but there are cases when an excursion just hasn't worked. Maybe hasn't worked is a little bit too harsh, but just has kind of been underwhelming overall. One that I recently found out about was Blair Davenport, or Bea Priestley during her time in Stardom, also AEW funnily enough. From 2019 to 2021, she spent time working in Stardom, and while she's still considered to be a very solid worker, she never really had that Mariah May breakthrough that a lot of people talk about when they think, send the talent over to Stardom. This is genuinely fine, and I'm not saying this is shit all over Blair Davenport. I really don't want it to be seen that way, because it's not. It's just an example to say that it doesn't work for everyone, and people should understand that when having these kind of discussions. You can't just say, send Anna Jay to Stardom, she'll get better, because there are cases where that doesn't work. You have to find what fits best for each wrestler. Just for an example on the men's side, Nick Wayne. Would he get better if he worked in New Japan for a while? Sure, but it just doesn't seem like the right fit, and so there's a higher likelihood that it just wouldn't work. Styles make fights, and sometimes some wrestlers' styles just aren't meant for this kind of fight. But sometimes there is that rare moment where it feels like the perfect fit. And I think that's the case for New Japan Pro Wrestling and Jack Perry. Now, I know that the majority of wrestling fans are all jacking it after the incredible contract rippage on Battle in the Valley, but I'm afraid there are still enemies in our way, because these Punk stands are just standing directly in the path of the scapegoat. For some reason, these nerds are all obsessed with Jack Perry. I don't get it, but it's a thing that's happening. Because of this, you would assume that it would be best to keep him away from AEW TV for a while, which they have, and I think that's the smart choice. It just kind of feels like they'd have to slot him into a big feud if he did come back. I mean, he is one of the pillars, and given everything overall, but I don't think it'd work. So again, thankfully, he's been away for a while. But issues arise when you think about AEW and the fact that they probably want Jack Perry working wrestling matches. They probably want him doing something to continue his development as a wrestler. Thankfully, again, the light bulb above their head had switched on, and they remembered they could also send their wrestlers over to New Japan, and that it doesn't always have to be the other way around. I think this is a perfect fit, like I mentioned, because I think Jack Perry in Japan can improve a lot as a wrestler. The way that they train and the way that they learn to tell stories in the ring is something that I feel like Jack Perry really needs and would kind of complete his, entire wrestling style. But there's also the fact that his Hollywood gimmick just never really clicked. It never really got going before he got taken off of TV. And through this run in Japan, he has time to work out the kinks through a different style and a different lens. He gets the chance to escape the binds of American weekly TV wrestling, and I think that can only lead to good things for him. I think this is a great example of an excursion just magically coming together at the perfect time, and I don't think that this kind of thing is used enough. There are wrestlers who need to take a step away from AEW TV, and if they're willing and if they're, determined to put in the time outside of AEW, they should go do something like this. It's also good to say it doesn't always just have to be New Japan Pro Wrestling. It can also be other Japanese promotions. It could be promotions in Mexico. But I feel like it has to be something different from American wrestling, because I think challenging yourself that way really does help these wrestlers improve. And then just to kind of wrap up the whole Jack Perry thing, you're also telling me that his first feud is going to be Shota Umino, and Shota looks like he's primed for the Never Openweight belt, so it'll probably be for that belt. I'm bought in. Let's put it clearly. I'm jacking it. I think after hearing all these reasons, maybe a lot of you agree that AEW wrestlers should go on excursions a lot more often. Let these wrestlers challenge themselves. If they're willing to put in the work, obviously if they want to, then they should be given the opportunities to go do so. Most of these guys have only known American indie wrestling, so just why not? I mean, they could use something different in their brains than that. It's also like, you got plenty of people to take their TV spots for a little while. Just let it happen. Now, to close this out, I'm sure that plenty of people were expecting me to list off a few names that I think would benefit greatly from an excursion right now. I'll say it again, just so we're all very clear. This is only my personal list. Obviously, the wrestlers they don't have to go to Japan if they don't want to, but this is who I think would benefit the most from it. We'll call it the ship 'em away list. And for the men, I've got the Guns, Griff Garrison, and the Gates of Agony. Again. For the women, I've got Willow. That's it. They're short lists, I know, but there's not too many people that I feel like jump off the page that feel like perfect fits for Japan right now for me. Obviously, there are probably people that I've missed, and if you have anyone that you think I've missed, make sure to leave a comment down below and tell me why. We're wrapping up, so make sure you leave a like alongside your comment. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. I make new videos every single Saturday. I talk graps, you know the deal. But it's been Novi. Thank you all so much for watching. Much love. Peace.